Okay, so let's just be clear about this. You failed the bar 4 times, and then you get
Yes.
a 279. It wasn't like
Yeah.
you just squeaked over, right?
So the night before the results were out, I had a dream. I missed Washington by 1 point. And I'm telling everyone this. I'm like, well, and I'm preparing myself for the fail notice. I was more shocked that it said that I passed than, yeah.
Wow. Well, hey, everybody, welcome back to Hanging Out with Successful Bar Exam Takers. We have a great story and a great person to talk to today, the newest member of the Washington State Bar, Jacqueline Shopbell. Hi, Jackie, how are you?
Hi, I'm good.
I bet
Ecstatic.
you are. I bet. Are you feel like you're floating today?
It's still very surreal.
Yeah, yeah, we've got your story is really a fascinating one. I want to dig into it, but I just want to start by letting people know that this has been a real climb for you to get to this point, hasn't it?
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah, and so today you just got your results, just what, day or two ago, right?
Yes, yesterday
Yeah,
morning.
and so today you're doing laundry, so
Yes.
it's a glamour
Yep.
thing, right? Yeah,
Oh
okay.
yeah, totally.
So there you go. What do I have to look forward to after I pass the bar? I'm going to do laundry. Okay. All right. Some people go to Disney World, some people do laundry. Cool. Well, why don't we start by you just telling a little bit about your backstory, kind of what happened, what got you to the point of wanting to take the bar exam?
So I went to Seattle U for my third year of law school, got my JD from South Dakota, wanting to practice in Washington, ideally to work with the local tribes here.
Yeah.
So I attempted the bar exam in Washington twice, both through a different bar prep. It was very hands off with that bar prep. And then I moved to Arizona for a job, took the Arizona bar there twice, and then actually did worse than I did in Washington. I tried using the materials from the other bar prep, but didn't actually re-sign with them. So again, my scores basically tanked when I went to Arizona. And then came back to Washington, started an LLM program, and then found your program and basically totally reworked how I took the bar,
Yeah.
which I'm very type A, which very much scared me, but apparently it works.
Yeah. And we're going to talk about that because you used a lot of our tools like PhotoReading and mind
I
mapping.
did. I
Um,
did.
what was it about Celebration Bar Review that made you decide you wanted to do something different?
Um, just the fact that so I'm a bookworm, and I tell people I'm, a nerd, and so I've always been I call it good recall. People say, "Oh, well, you can memorize." Um, my parents tell me, "Oh, well, you have, photographic memory." I'm like, "Oh, it's just good recall." So I have always approached the bar thinking, "Well, I'll just memorize," whereas I believe it was one of your first ones I found on YouTube, basically saying you can't memorize everything; it has to be application, and that just the fact that it was more application and being and terms being applied that kind of clicked. So I tried doing it this first time I took it in Arizona, but moving back to Washington, trying to start school again, I just didn't have the time. So the second time I went through with your program, I dedicated the time that I believe I needed, and it turned out well.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. It sure did. Let's talk about those attempts in Washington and Arizona that didn't go well for you.
Okay.
You put in a lot of time to study.
Yes.
You followed that approach of memorize and recite and cram. What was it? What did it feel like when you got the results? When it kept coming back with not passing, multiple times?
So the good thing about Washington is they release to the applicant the day before they post to everybody else. So I would literally have that day where I would have my little crying moments, and just it was basically a feeling of what do I have to do to pass this?
Mhm.
Um and with Arizona, they would actually you find out by their public list, and you just have to see if your name was on there, which was a lot more daunting and
Yeah,
obviously a lot more depressing.
yeah.
So,
Yeah, absolutely. Did you feel like giving up?
I did, but I figured I have 12 plus years of schooling in this between primary and undergrad and law school and now an LLM. I'm thinking, well, I this is the area I want to practice in. I have some courtroom experience and I feel it's something I can excel at.
Mhm.
I believe I heard in one of your videos saying how it literally is a hazing process and how you just have to get past this one hurdle, and once you're there, you're there.
Yeah.
So,
And this morning it must be feeling like, wow, the hurdle's behind me,
yeah.
right?
I've checked a few times to, like, make sure that it actually said what it said.
Right, right. That's a pretty normal reaction, I think. Okay, so you've been through this, you've tried a few times, it's not working out. Sort of feels like your life is on hold, I suppose, while
Yeah,
that's
very
happening.
much so.
Yeah. And then you found Celebration Bar Review,
Mhm.
and you started. When did you begin your studies for this February exam?
I actually I started reading some of the material in September. I started photo reading in October and then mind mapping late December.
Okay,
Um
so let's break that down a little bit. Okay, so you got underway early. You were
mhm,
starting to do some study while you were going back to school for your LLM,
correct.
right? Okay.
Correct.
Then this thing, photo reading, comes into play. Why don't, I mean, obviously I talk about photo reading all the time,
Yeah.
but I love to have students who are using it describe what it's like for them and what it is. Can you tell our audience a little bit about photo reading?
Again, as I said, I have very good recall, and it's kind of amazing how with photo reading, you're literally taking in both pages of a book at the same time. You're not focusing on a specific paragraph or a specific word as most people do when they're just reading a book. But again, it would be weird, and especially the night before the bar, I would literally see these pages in my mind, and I would like basically be able to map out everything that I'd read. Which was a little daunting considering I was trying to go to sleep the night before the bar.
Yeah, I
So
remember you posted in our Facebook group
yeah,
that you kept seeing the pages flip through. So
yeah.
it's a little weird, huh?
So
Okay.
that was a
So
little daunting, but
yeah, yeah. So when you were photo reading, instead of reading word for word or line for line, you're
hmm
literally flipping pages and then activating the material. And we'll come to that
yes.
activation in a moment. How long did it take you to learn the technique of photo reading?
Um, I think so. The um actual teaching, I believe, is 4, 15, 20-ish minute that basically tells you how to do it. And then I think I started a topic and went through.
Yeah.
I'm the type of person that if it's gonna work for me, I have to basically do it on my own. Um, I think it started clicking about the second full topic.
Hmm.
So I would say within a week and a half, I was like literally I was proactively at and very hands-on photo reading by that time.
Yeah. And once you've photo read and you start to see it working, it's hard to imagine going back, isn't it?
Very much so, especially when you have to read so much.
Yeah, yeah, there's no voodoo here. There's no
No,
magic. There's
no,
no tribal incantation. We're not doing
no.
it. No, it's just using your genius mind.
Yeah,
And the fact that you had greater recall than a lot of people normally certainly helps. But you don't have to have a photographic memory
yeah,
to use photo
yeah.
reading, right? Okay.
Correct.
So you start photo reading. You start integrating that into the course, and then we get to this thing called mind mapping. Can you talk a little bit about mind maps?
So there were specific areas of the law that I wasn't very comfortable with, one being property and contracts. So basically, with the mind mapping, you would take full subjects in one topic. So for contracts, there would be a whole section of just consideration. Basically, mind mapping is taking that topic, breaking it down to the important components. If there are elements, what I did is that I would have each element off of a branch.
Hmm.
So my mind mapping, I'd use the table of contents for the overall topic, and then I had each section with its own mind map behind that.
So they were nested basically. There's a big one
Correct.
and then smaller ones, right?
Correct.
Now, did you hand draw your mind maps or did you
I
computer
did.
draw them? You hand drew them.
So I hand and then a lot of people were doing, very artsy,
Yeah.
craftsy, so I actually did that as well.
Ah, so you have pretty pictures.
Yeah, they're not as
Okay.
nice as some of them, but yeah.
Yeah. And then you started reviewing your mind maps as you're working through, right? So as you're writing
Yes.
essays, and for those that don't know, Washington is a uniform bar exam
Yes.
administration. So you have
Yes.
6 essays, 2 performance tests, and the MBE. So as you're
Yes.
working through your work, you're now going back to the mind map and saying, all right, do I have that concept in the mind map, right?
Right.
And then photo reading again, adding to it, photo reading, adding to it. And did you
Right.
continually update your mind maps?
So a lot of the mind maps I got very detailed more toward the end. That's actually how I reviewed.
Okay.
So if I knew a subject very well, like adverse possession, I actually just had adverse possession as a section, but I didn't go very in depth into it.
Right.
Um, but I believe I would have things written on the side. I would definitely add specific terms I wanted to have there if there was a call in the question that required it.
Yeah. And the mind map, for those that don't know, is a visual representation of the material rather than a linear, just straight taking notes.
Yeah, I
And
actually
so,
have a
do you have
example
one?
here.
Do
Yeah,
you?
I
Oh,
do
pull it
actually.
out. Yeah, absolutely. Oh boy, this is
So
good. Audio
yeah,
visuals.
that's
Oh, look at
woo.
this. All right,
So that's
criminal law. Yeah, yeah. Pull it
yeah.
back a little bit. Let's pull it back there.
And
Uh,
then let's see one that can actually be seen. So
so you didn't throw all these away after the bar.
yeah, I actually have a friend. So I have friends that
Okay.
are 3Ls, and
Yeah.
then that's
Okay.
whoop.
Great.
So yeah.
Very cool.
So I have a friend that actually wants them. So they're actually teaching mind mapping in bar study skills at my law school.
How do you like
So
that?
yeah. So
Thank you. They should pay me, because I'm the person that developed mind maps for this
oh
purpose. But okay,
oh
fine. That's good. Um, you gotta love these law schools. All right. So that's very cool. So you had your mind maps, you're reviewing your mind maps.
mhm.
I remember in the Facebook group you posted at one point, you were getting 70 to 80% of the multi-state questions correct.
Yes. So that was the second thing that I had a hard time letting go of. You were telling us to basically engage our subconscious, read the question, read the answers, answer, move on,
Yeah.
don't dwell, and
What'd you think
that's
about that? Come on, be
I
honest.
I was thinking that can't work. I actually so the first time I went through it, it was probably 3 weeks before the test. I'm thinking this isn't going to work. I go through, I have the letter B 3 times in a row, and it was correct 3 times in a row. I'm like, "Oh, apparently that works."
Apparently. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
and
when you had taken the bar previously, do you remember generally what your multi-state scores had been?
I actually have them. So, Washington has all of your previous things all
Mhm.
on their dashboard. So my previous MBEs were around the 125. The one where I passed, it was 142.
Wow.
Yeah, I earned
Wow.
19 points in my MBE.
Wow. And what was your overall score?
My overall score was a 279.
Okay, so look, folks, at 279 on the UBE, you know this, Jackie, don't you? You could wave
Yeah,
into any state in the country with the UBE.
except for Alaska and Idaho.
Yeah, because everyone wants to be in Alaska and Idaho. Don't ask me. I think they both were 280 or 282. But you could
Yeah,
wave into New
yeah,
York, New Jersey, DC,
yeah,
Colorado, New Mexico. I mean, name
yeah,
it.
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, there are areas that I got 71% in evidence, 81% in crim, and I'm just like, "Geez."
Dude, it worked. Okay, so let's just be clear about this. You failed the bar 4 times, and then you get
Yes.
a 279. It wasn't like
Yeah.
you just squeaked over, right?
That's so the night before the, results were out, I had a dream, I missed Washington by 1 point, and I'm telling everyone this, I'm like, "Well," and I'm preparing myself for the fail notice. I was more shocked that it said that I passed than yeah.
Wow. I am so proud of you. That
Thank
is,
you.
I mean, wait till this video comes out and people watch this, okay? I mean, there's going to be jaws dropping when they see
Yeah.
this number because this is, again, one of those spectacular numbers.
Yeah.
You didn't study harder, I would imagine this time. You
No,
studied,
no,
but you just
I'm
studied
taking
differently.
full. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
is
taking
that
full
safe to
course
say?
of LM courses, so yeah.
Yeah. And you were in our basic coaching course, so I wasn't
Okay.
working one-on-one with you.
No.
But you were part of our group coaching calls, right?
Yes.
Can you talk a
Yes.
little bit about the group coaching?
So the group coaching is there are usually 2 to 3 sessions Sunday and sometimes on Saturday. So basically, and what I thought it was going to be was kind of like a round robin if people had questions on law that they weren't getting. And when it was more to the form, I'm thinking, okay, so I have to ask questions differently. Um, and just seeing other concerns that people had with taking the information in, it made me realize issues that I had in just reading the questions as opposed to just knowing the law.
Mhm.
Um, I believe one thing that I really needed to do was slow down and actually see what I was reading. If you don't realize that it says does not instead of saying something does,
Yeah,
that changes quite a bit.
yeah.
So,
Cool. So you participated in a lot of those group coaching calls. I know you guys
yes,
got pretty close. The folks that were
yes,
in those calls. Kelly, who
yeah.
is a member of our staff, is the moderator, and that's one of her areas of responsibility. And she was very excited when she heard your results, to say the least. But sometimes people ask me, do I have to buy a personal or premium coaching to pass the bar if I failed before? I think you're a great example of somebody that took our basic
Mhm.
course, which is a pretty economical course. I mean, it's probably
Yes,
way less than you spent for the big box courses.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, definitely.
And use the tools of photo reading and use the mind mapping and the intuitive method of answering questions. And then you get this spectacular gain and score.
Yeah.
That's got to be a pretty wonderful feeling.
Yeah, so my score for Washington prior was actually 256 both times. And yeah, again, I was just hoping to see at least in the 260s and totally blown away when I saw what my score was.
Yeah, a 23-point gain is nothing. Is a big deal. That's a big deal on the bar exam. It's not,
Yeah.
it's not like these are scale points, folks. 23
Yeah.
scale points is like forever.
Yeah.
Um, so when results came out, tell me about that. What was it like? What happened?
So Washington, they told us that it was April 13th on, and I knew it was Friday. I'm like, Friday the 13th. I'm like, of course it is. So I actually got up probably around 7, just got ready for the day. It was about 7:45. They said that they'd be released at 8, and I figured, well, I'll just look and see if it posted, and they posted. And looking at and I'm like, "What?" So, yeah, it was definitely a surprise, because I actually walked out thinking I would tell people, I was like, "Well, it could have gone one of." I have days where I'm like, "Oh, I think I squeaked by," or I'll have days where I'm like, "Oh, I know I bombed it." I'll tell people this, and I'm thinking, "No, I bombed it." Like, I'm telling you there's a hope, but yeah, I was thinking that there was no hope.
Interesting, huh? And who'd you call first?
Um, so, there's a friend of mine, she's in an LLM program, but different than, and I basically texted her, I was like, "I passed the explicative bar exam." She's my one that I, like, would always, basically my vent wall.
That's
So,
great. And it's such a relief, I'm sure, just to feel like it's over, like you get your life back, and now you get to
yeah,
go on.
definitely.
I know you're interested in working with tribes and doing tribal law.
Yes.
So what do you see in the future? What does your future look like now that you've passed the bar?
So there's actually I interviewed the day I got my results for a internship in Montana. There's the law school I'm going to has is very big in Indian law, and there's actually I believe a tribe that's actually looking for a prosecuting attorney, which is the area I'd like to go into.
Wow.
And basically she's looking for someone that, she's like, "What do you think they're gonna pass?" Basically third year law students that you're like, "Do you think they're gonna pass?" So ideally that will be an option that will pan out.
Yeah, yeah. And of course, with your score, there's so many places you
Yeah.
can wave into.
Yeah.
particularly in the West where tribal laws practice more frequently. So
Yes.
lots of job opportunities all of a sudden, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
yeah, I can hear
amazing.
that sigh. Yeah, I get
I
to
was
move
like,
forward.
well, if I because I was actually thinking like, well, I'm gonna have to get a job doing either paralegal work or something, thinking, and then I was actually going to be doing the one-on-one with you where you'd be reviewing my essays,
Yeah.
and so it's weird not having to figure out a backup plan. Like I can just start applying
Yeah.
to
Well, thanks
jobs.
for all that confidence.
Sorry, well, no. So I was actually looking and doing the more extensive
Yeah, no, no, no.
program.
Yeah.
So it was more me than
Yeah,
yeah.
and I can understand, and I think this is I appreciate your honesty because I think a lot of
Yeah.
times people kind of go like, "Oh, I knew I had it in the bag the whole time." Well, very few people walk out of the bar exam knowing they've got it locked.
Yeah.
You crushed it. I mean, you didn't just squeak by. You absolutely blew past the number, and
Yeah.
yet it doesn't feel that way, does it? I mean, you're
No.
just kind of like, But one of the things that think is so interesting is that you did what we asked you to do. You put
Mhm.
your doubts and questions aside, and you did the intuitive method on the
Mhm.
multi-state, right?
Yes.
You finished all 100 questions in under 3 hours,
I for the test itself, I think I did it just under 2
just
when
under
I
two. Yeah,
just under 2, and then when
yeah.
I was doing the practice, I was doing it in about just over 2 hours.
All right, let's just be clear. You got a 142 scaled on the multi-state, and you did
Yes.
100 questions in just over 2 hours each session. Now, when
Yes.
people say, "Oh, you can't do that. You got to grind through and eliminate wrong answers and memorize and recite," I would bring to you Exhibit A, Jackie Chabelle. Okay,
Yeah.
so that clearly not the case. And your essay writing was different too, right? I mean, that
Yes.
obviously went way up.
Yes.
You weren't using IRAC. You were using the FLA
The
writing system.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there were questions, so every time I've taken the bar, there are questions that I'm very I believe there was a jurisdiction slash family law slash whether or not um post nuptial agreements were
Hmm.
valid.
Hmm.
So that one it was basically every area that I am interested in, and so it basically everything jumped out at me. Then it came to covenants and easements and a developer and um the when it's like a group of homes, like the rural, and I'm just
Yeah,
like,
yeah, homeowners association.
thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
And I literally I would write I did the FLA, and basically I had done the same thing prior, but I know it was a lot more jumbled. The FLA makes you keep everything 1, 2, 3. This
Yeah.
is the facts, this is the law, this is the analysis. And I may not have known everything, but I think it read so much better.
Yeah.
And so I and
Well,
it's just it go
137 on your written part, which would be passing in virtually
yeah.
every jurisdiction in the country just on its own.
Yeah. So, yeah, I so yeah, so the again, it's just there were two questions that there was then they had this like two paragraphs of all these facts of this person being from state A, this person from being from state B, the accident happened in state C. And then the final question is, can the lawyer be sanctioned? I'm like, what?
Yeah.
So,
That was weird.
yeah, that one I definitely basically pulled. Well, when you're and I basically went into, well, the only time you have to have specific facts for is during this, and it didn't say specifically, like, it was basically like, can they be sanctioned? I'm like, that can be very dispositive. Like, you could just say no and then move on. But so that one I felt like I had to find more to talk about.
Yeah. So instead of issue spotting, you were really trying to drive deeper into the disputes and see what was going
Pretty,
on.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this is all very cool. I mean, these are great numbers, great results. They're jaw dropping, really. Um, if you were giving advice to someone who has been through a journey like yours, where they've taken the exam, couple jurisdictions, and not been successful, what would you say to them at this point?
Obviously, what you're doing isn't working. I'm assuming if they are, you can't do the same thing and expect a different result. You can't memorize all of this, and just because you're memorizing it doesn't mean you're going to know how to write it.
Mhm.
You can know every single law, but if you don't know how to write it to where the graders can see that you know what you know, it doesn't really help you in the end. So again, you have to trust the process, and I believe that this is a process that does. I mean, I again, my scores actually show that it works.
Yeah, boy, they do. And if they really do, if somebody said, should they choose Celebration Bar Review, or why should they select us, particularly since they've been doing the other things, the traditional things?
Mhm.
How would you answer that?
Um, if it, I don't want to tell my friends, well, you need to use this, even though they should, because a lot of them have at this point already signed up for here. It's Themis, Barbary, Kaplan. Um, yes, they may have. I believe Washington in the July 2017 had a 75% pass rate, which is astronomical.
Hmm.
But in the 2018, where most of the repeaters were, it was 49%.
Yeah, it's less than half. Right.
Yeah. And then the repeaters that took in February, it was 30.
Wow.
So it Celebration Bar Review, I think, is a lot better because it focuses on what they're actually looking for. It's kind of like hiding the ball. It's like I don't need to know every little thing about foreclosures if they're only going to ask A, B, and C.
Right.
I don't need to know the entire history of common law if they're only going to ask if the model penal code is used. So I think the big bar review companies, I mean, they have a lot of campaigning, but just because it's bigger doesn't mean it's better.
Yeah. Well, and certainly in your case, bigger didn't mean better, did it?
No, not at
No.
all. It was very impersonal.
Yeah. We've talked a little bit about our Facebook group, the private Facebook group we have for our students. And I know you were an active participant in that group as well as the group coaching calls.
Mhm.
I do hope you're going to stick around in the group
Yeah,
to just be
yeah,
there.
definitely.
And I know that our past successful students have been part of the group and stay. It's one of the cool things, I think, is
Yeah,
that, now you get to kind of change hats and be,
yeah.
that'll be cool, huh? And fun. And I bet you'll get called into some of those group coaching calls as a surprise guest.
Okay.
Um, but anything else that you want to share with our audience today? Anything that you think would be helpful for them as they're listening? Because I know this is going to encourage so many people and give hope to so many people who are maybe feeling pretty discouraged after results.
The one thing that I've always heard is if you study a certain way, don't change it, but if you aren't just because so study the way that you know how. If you're not a flashcard person, don't start using flashcards.
Mhm.
If you're a very visual person, I think the mind mapping would be awesome. Um, but again, you can't second guess yourself. Um, Using the intuition method, either you know it or you don't. You're not going to know it half an hour into the test if you didn't know it at the beginning.
That's right.
So just again, you only have to show that you're competent. That once you're in practice, you can look it up. So just you got to trust the process.
Yeah, I think that's it. You got to trust the process. Well, I am so pleased for you. So happy to see this. I know it's just got to feel like the whole world just changes and
Yeah,
it just opens up to you and now you have all these opportunities and my goodness, with this score you can go anywhere in the country you want to go.
yeah,
Which is pretty awesome. I mean, you really rock this, and so I know you've got to be proud of yourself. Your family's proud of you.
yeah.
We're certainly proud of you for what you've done, and I'm very appreciative that you would share your story because it's not always
Yeah.
easy to talk about sort of that frustration and the things that happen. But now, you know, in the rearview mirror, just a few hours, it sort of feels like okay, that's over, right? And
Yeah.
now we get to
Yeah.
move on. get to do the laundry. We get to, you know,
Yeah.
all the
Run
important stuff.
errands.
Yeah, there you go. All those good things. Well, Jackie, thanks again for being with us. It's been great to have you in the course. I'm so pleased, and really do look forward to having you continue to participate with our ongoing students, our current students. I know they're going to love to hear from you as well. And I hope you'll stay in touch and let us know what happens as you move forward. I have no doubt you're going to be a terrific member of the bar wherever you choose to practice, and whatever tribal council hires you is going to be very, very fortunate indeed. So thank you for being with us today.
Thank you so much.
Great. And for everybody that joined us, thanks. We'll be back again next time for another interview with another successful bar exam student. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.